When you're an elite athlete, the drive for peak performance is just relentless. But what if one of the most controversial plants on the planet actually holds a key to recovering faster and performing better? Well, today, we're diving deep into the work of Dr. Ricardo Ferreira to explore the complex science of cannabis in sports medicine.
But first, let me ask you this, and it's a question for every athlete, every weekend warrior, really anyone who's ever pushed their body to the limit. What is the hidden cost of all that effort? Because behind every single record, every personal best, there's a silent, internal battle raging inside your body.
And that's exactly what we're getting into in our first section, the athlete's invisible battle. See, to really get a handle on the cost of performance, you have to zoom in, way down to the cellular level, where this war is being fought every single time you train.
The first enemy we need to talk about is something called oxidative stress. Dr. Ferreira explains this with a fantastic metaphor. Just think of your cell's powerhouses, the mitochondria, as these tiny little engines. And as they burn fuel to give you energy, they also produce exhaust. This exhaust, this toxic smoke, is made up of these nasty, unstable molecules we call free radicals.
So what's the big deal with this smoke? Well, during really intense exercise, your body is just flooded with these free radicals. To make themselves stable again, they literally go around stealing parts from your healthy cells. And this sets off a massive chain reaction of damage. That whole cascade, that's the real reason you feel that deep muscle soreness, inflammation, and exhaustion after a brutal workout.
But hold on a second. Isn't stress supposed to make us stronger? And yeah, it is, but only up to a point. That's the whole idea behind what's called the exercise U-curve. A little bit of stress, a process called hormesis, is great. It triggers your body to adapt and get stronger. But if you push way too far, you just overwhelm your body's defenses. It's all about finding that perfect balance, that sweet spot where the cure doesn't become the poison.
So how in the world do you manage this internal war? Well, let's move on to our second section and meet a very, very unexpected botanical ally. And look, we are not talking about cannabis the way it's usually portrayed. We're talking about it as the source material puts it, like a sophisticated botanical pharmacy. To understand this, you really have to shift your whole perspective. For decades, the stigma around cannabis has been all about THC, all about the psychoactive high. But the science is looking so much deeper. It's focused on non-psychoactive compounds like CBD and those aromatic terpenes. The goal isn't to get high, it's to restore the body's natural balance, what scientists call homeostasis.
And this brings us right to Section 3, the athlete syndrome solution. Because what you have to realize is that athletes aren't just dealing with one single issue. They're up against this complex web of interconnected challenges that Dr. Ferreira's work conveniently groups together under this one umbrella term.
So what exactly is this athlete syndrome? It basically stands on four main pillars. You've got chronic pain and inflammation, slow recovery and fatigue, performance anxiety and mental stress, and, of course, poor quality sleep. I mean, for any dedicated athlete out there, this list probably sounds way too familiar. Okay, so how could cannabis possibly help? Let's tackle the first pillar, pain and inflammation. Cannabinoids, especially CBD, are known to be really powerful anti-inflammatories. They might help manage pain right at the source, which could offer a new alternative to conventional drugs like ibuprofen that, let's be honest, can come with some serious long-term risks for your gut, your kidneys, and your heart.
And what about solution number 2, recovery and fatigue? Hey, remember that toxic smoke, that oxidative stress we were talking about earlier? Well, here is where it all comes full circle. By fighting that oxidative stress directly, CBD may help protect your muscle cells from all that damage, which could mean less soreness and a much faster return to your training.
But, as we all know, the battle isn't just physical, right? Which brings us to solution 3, anxiety and mental health. Peak performance absolutely requires a calm, focused mind. Research suggests CBD might help dial down anxiety, not by knocking you out, but by interacting with your serotonin receptors. For an athlete, that could be a game changer for maintaining emotional control when the pressure is on.
And finally, we get to the absolute cornerstone of all recovery, solution number 4, sleep quality. You just can't perform at your best if you don't regenerate, and deep sleep is when all the magic happens. By helping to tackle the pain and anxiety that so often mess with our sleep, certain cannabinoids might help athletes get that deep, restorative rest they desperately need to repair both their body and their mind.
Okay, so this all sounds incredibly promising, but here is an absolutely critical point, and it brings us to Section 4, a personalized rulebook. Listen, when it comes to cannabinoids, there is no magic bullet. There is no one-size-fits-all dose. The right approach is completely 100% dependent on the individual athlete.
I mean, the rules of the game are totally different depending on who you are. So, let's say you're a pro athlete getting drug tested by WADA. You have to stick to pure CBD isolate, period. You can't risk even a trace amount of THC. But an amateur athlete who isn't being tested, they might get more benefit from a full-spectrum product where all the compounds work together. And then you've got someone like an esports gamer, where the main goal is focus and anxiety control. For them, a specific blend of CBD and certain terpenes might be the perfect fit.
Now, with all this incredible potential, we absolutely have to talk about the flip side of the coin. And that brings us to our final section, risks and red flags. Because alongside all the potential benefits, there are significant, serious risks that you just cannot ignore.
Let's start with just one number, 69%. According to a 2019 study, that's how many online CBD products were inaccurately labeled. Some of them even had illegal levels of THC in them. For a pro athlete, that's not just a risk, that is a career-ending landmine waiting to go off.
So here's the reality of what you're up against. The number one risk, a doping violation from a contaminated product. But there are also real concerns about things like amotivational syndrome from chronic high THC use, potential interactions with other medications, and just the general dangers of a market that's basically the Wild West. It's largely unregulated. The key takeaway here is simple. This is not something to mess around with on your own. Medical supervision is absolutely essential.
And that really brings us back to the core philosophy of this whole approach, and it's captured perfectly in this quote from Dr. Ricardo Ferreira. The goal is not just to silence a symptom, but to restore the body's fundamental balance. It's about working with your body, not just fighting against the pain.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. When you weigh all the potential benefits for recovery, for pain, for mental health, against the very real risks of doping violations and a sketchy market, is this the future of sports medicine? Or is it simply a risk that's not worth taking? The science is still evolving, and you know what? The conversation is really just getting started.